Hello and welcome to Cape Ann ARTWaves to our 2022 season. ARTWaves is a member program of 1623 Studios here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. We kicked off our program in March of 2020. ARTWaves delves into the working life of the local arts community here on Cape Ann. My name is Jacqueline Ganem DeFalco. I'm co-hosting and co-producing this show with Christine Fisher. We're excited to announce that ARTWaves has received nearly 12,000 views on YouTube since we began, and we've interviewed nearly 60 artists. Cape Ann ARTWaves is made possible by our generous sponsors, Prince Insurance Agency, M. Christine Fisher, visual artist, Martha Anger, real estate advisor from Compass Realty, Protective Packaging, Inc., and the Common Crow Natural Market. We'd really like to thank those sponsors for helping us continue the program through this year. We'd also like to recognize Steve Lacey and Pat Verga, who provided us with original music for the show, and acknowledge our partners, C-Arts and 1623 Studios. And together, we've made the show happen. Today's guest is a very special lady, Allyson Christopher. And I have to show off for a moment because I'm wearing a beautiful piece that was made by Allyson. And you're going to learn a lot about Allyson, who is today a silk painting artist in the category of wearable art, which happens to be a personal favorite. So I found this lovely quote that Allyson shared with me from Crafts Report magazine is something that really gives you some insight into who she is as an artist. The secret to whitewater rafting is to follow the direction of the rapids rather than focus on each threatening rock that stands between you and the smoother water. And the way that I interpret this in terms of Allyson's biography that we're going to talk about in a moment is that absolutely nothing can stop her from looking at the next wave in a positive way. And she's definitely on a wonderful artistic trajectory, which we're going to learn about now. So welcome, Allyson. Before I read your bio, just say hello.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Everybody can see what beautiful color we're in store for today. So Allyson is a born naturally gifted artist with no barriers and constant natural sense of curiosity, willingness to challenge herself, push the boundaries of what's possible, seamlessly tied together with an eye for all things that are beautiful and then crafted into art. Allyson made her mark as an acclaimed award-winning artist, showcasing her craft at nationally renowned art exhibits. She started her career directly out of the University of Northern Arizona by launching the A.L. Christopher Studios and never looked back. Allyson spent the first 20 years of her career creating, designing, crafting magical, one-of-a-kind creations in jewelry, art to wear, all one of a kind. Allyson pushed the boundaries of design, style, and technique. All her work was either in silver, 14 karat gold, then enhanced with precious and unique semi-precious stones. She has evolved as an artist considerably. She took a pause from jewelry, transformed from jewelry to becoming a painter, and not just any kind of canvas, but painting in silk, beginning 9 years ago in 2013. The blank canvas that has no boundaries except her creative eye to express her designs with a limitless array of colors and opportunity. She's developed her craft with focusing on designing and painting one-of-a-kind scarves, influenced by whimsical flowers, the sea, and everything that Mother Nature has to offer. Her wearable art has also evolved now from scarves to capes, pillows, wall art pictures, and all things related to home decor. She's been active in 10 Pound Studio, Rocky Neck, and recently showed a full body of work in a show dedicated to Judy Gettiman at the Cove Gallery. Allyson lives in Ipswich, but she can often be seen here in Gloucester at 10 Pound Studio. So welcome today, Allyson, to our show. And we're going to just jump right in and find out a little bit more about, and I think you're going to have to explain to everybody the quote that I read and your your experience that led you to use that quote in the magazine, going through the rapids. So I'm sure that's part of your history that you want to share today. Let's talk about your journey.
Well, I started with a wonderful teacher, of course. And that teacher was my mother, who was a painter as well. And she painted in a variety of mediums and also taught art lessons. But I really got into the craft field because my grandmother had a love of sewing and needlework, knitting, and some of those things stuck, some of them did not. And then I made it to high school, thank goodness. And I had another wonderful teacher that introduced me to the jewelry industry and how to go about cutting stones that would be adapted to wearable art in the form of rings or pendants or earrings, whatnot. And we learned the art of fabrication in sterling silver. And from there, because of her wonderful tutelage, I made it to university, and I have a degree in fine arts with an emphasis in jewelry and metalsmithing. And one of my best all-time jobs was as a river runner down the Colorado River. And that taught me a lot in the beauty of the Western atmosphere, as far as the stones and the power of water and what water can do to shape Mother Earth, and the appreciation of what water can do, and the different combinations of colors that the Western environment has to offer, which of course is very different from the East. And I get a lot of design ideas just from walking around, taking a walk and looking at Mother Nature, as well as architecture. My favorite form of architecture is Art Deco and Art Nouveau. And buildings have a great variety of shapes that you can pick and choose from. So whenever I came across a stumbling block on what shape would work with something else, Mother Nature or architecture came to the rescue.
Well, I have to say, Allyson, I think this is a good time to show some of your pieces from early in your jewelry career. I have some exquisite earrings to show here. And then another set, I believe that's a pendant and earrings. We're going to show them while you're speaking. But I think if you could speak to some of the jewelry specifically, because I feel like I can see what you're talking about. I can see some incredible sculptural, architectural shapes in here. And I feel like even some of the stones that you were using must have been inspired by your time out west.
Yes, I would have to say that I am a big stoneaholic. I love the colors that stones produce and offer to, itself on how, and they often will speak on how a piece should end up. So I start with a stone and I build the components around it. And my work was very similar to putting a puzzle together. And because each piece is cut, soldered, formed with a hammer for texture, using a jeweler's saw blade to cut out various shapes. And hopefully at the end, I had a piece that I was proud to put my name to. And I have a very short attention span, so no two pieces are the same. I always have to have something different in each piece.
Right.
But you need to create a series so that it's recognizable.
Right.
And I really liked that whole process when creating jewelry.
Allyson, before we move on and start to talk about design and how you evolved, I think you should share just some highlights, or at least a highlight from your work in jewelry, because you really went all out. I mean, you were at all the shows, as far as I can tell from, reading everything that you sent me. What was kind of like the highlight for you of your first big artistic phase in the jewelry world?
Well, in 1992, I informed my husband I was going to jump into the frying pan, into the craft market, and try to make a go of my work. And I was lucky enough to be able, and 92 really started to see the whole craft industry expand and move and be recognized. And there were many shows that one could pick up and investigate and show their work. My work in particular is what I was trying for. And I did shows throughout the Eastern Seaboard, from wholesale up to retail. And at one point, wholesale was just becoming too much because the way I constructed my work was all through fabrication and nothing was repeated. I didn't cast anything. So it was very labor intensive. Eventually, I just went to straight retail, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, of course. Everybody thinks, oh, an artist, wow, that must be a blast, and it is.
Well, I know you won some awards, and your work must have been available, I would think, in many shops. Did you have any favorites out there that were, good outlets for you when you were even on the wholesale side?
Well, I would say in the 90s, Boston was a hub for craft galleries. And I did exhibit quite a bit throughout Boston.
That's great.
A particular favorite? No, because a lot of them have gone by the wayside, unfortunately. So other avenues needed to be investigated for marketing. Yeah. But it was a good adventure.
It was, and I'm sure you learned a ton that you'll apply, be able to apply. Let's talk about design. I mean, one of the things that I found myself is, that you can learn the technical part of all of this world, in school or in a class. But design is much more innate. Talk a little bit more about your sense of design, because I'm looking at what you're wearing. I'm looking at what you're surrounded by. I'm looking at what I'm wearing, and I'm saying, this woman has an eye. So where does this come from?
Well, design is, you're right. If you don't have a good design to start with, and it could change as you're progressing on, I'm just going to say, on a piece of silk right now. And colors can change as you're moving along the piece of silk. But once you have an idea in your head, then executing it is vital to get to where you need to go. And design for me often comes from nature and what's surrounding me, as well as colors. Color combination, I find whenever I'm stuck, go look at a flower. Mother Nature already did all the work. All you have to do is pick up some of those already put down colors and reintroduce them to your own work. And oftentimes that works, takes a lot of stress out of it.
And we're going to share some of those pieces of nature here while we're talking, because it's so obvious when we see your work. But it's not exclusively Mother Nature. Like, I'm looking at a piece behind you that looks much more abstract. And I believe that this is another direction, and the one that I'm looking at has the gray background, and it has some interesting swirly things going on there. Tell me about that design, because that's maybe not so much out of nature per se.
It's more of a bold design for sure. It's I would say influenced more through shapes in architecture. Okay. And I like both avenues, nature and architecture. So I'll try to do a combination of both, oftentimes in a piece. For example, a flower doesn't always have to be exactly as Mother Nature has put it down. I've taken some liberties.
No, I get it. So we talked a little bit about the fact that you transitioned from jewelry to silk. But there was, there's a time in there when you were really kind of almost off the radar. And can you just talk a little bit more about your journey in terms of this transition you made, and then kind of how you could compare your journeys in a sense, where you are today now from where you were in the world of jewelry?
So in 2007, my mother needed a lot more attention, and something had to give. So it was either that and you only have so much time in a day. So
Mhm.
I decided to dedicate my time to taking care of her. And when she eventually passed away in 2013, I was sort of at a crossroads on what I was going to do next. And I felt that I had explored as much as I could at the moment. That doesn't mean that I might not go back to jewelry, metalsmithing, but at that moment I was looking for a new avenue, something different to do. And I happened to stumble across a silk exhibit, which led me to Gloucester and 10 Pound Studios. And this like-minded group of men and women, we just love working on silk and painting on silk and seeing what we can produce at the end of let's just say a 4-hour stretch. And it was, ever since picking up a paintbrush, I've had a hard time putting it down because it's so fun to do. It's very soothing. I just can lose hours on myself on the process of painting on silk, and I would never have thought myself a painter. So
but it's coming back, and it's all from your mother and your teachers and all the people you mentioned earlier, I think.
I think so. You can never underestimate someone entering your life,
right?
Because you never know what you can pick up from them and what they can share with you.
Well, I have to point out, of course, for the viewers, this incredible piece that you're wearing, which to me is the ultimate, sort of crossover between your jewelry world and your silk world, because it's silk jewelry, right? So that's just exquisite, just exquisite. But it seems that this getting lost in the art per se maybe is something, I'm guessing, that's quite different than how you felt in the jewelry world. I don't know. I mean, I'm interested in kind of comparing the two.
Well, I could also lose myself in making jewelry too.
Okay.
But that was a harder form to get to the end result. And I find painting on silk is very rewarding. And I have been investigating how I can turn silk into a wearable jewelry piece. And that's what you're seeing here. Also, I'm interested in doing more wearables versus just silk scarves, which have their place, but I'm looking for things that people can be a little bit more dressier.
Let's talk about silk painting specifically now. We're going to show some photos of what it looks like when it's all out on the table or rack. I don't know if there's a term for, you can help me with the technical terms for painting on silk, and talk about the process, and sort of from beginning to end. Where do you start, and then what materials you have to learn how to use in order to get into this space, and how much space you need and how much time you need. Just talk about it, because I think not everybody's really been exposed to this.
Okay. Well, basically you start with a blank piece of silk, and there are many places that you can pick up silk already pre-hemmed, which saves a lot of time. Say if you're going to do a scarf, and from that you would need to stretch the silk onto a frame so that it becomes taut, like a canvas for a painter would be. Then you can draw your design out prior with a water soluble pencil, and that will give you the general idea of how I like things more controlled. I like my designs to be tight. There's various forms of silk painting where they're very flowing and loose, like a watercolor. And silk painting is very close to watercolor painting, but I like things to be more outlined to get a visible shape. And so we use professional silk dyes that you can blend just like watercolors, and to get various shading in a piece. And once the piece has dried and cured, then the piece is ready to be steamed. And steaming sets the colors in place. And that takes a good 2 hours to steam the piece in place, the dyes in place. From there, you wash it out, you hang it to dry, you iron it, and if you decide you're going to make a wearable top, you need to come up with a design and sew it. And then you have Jackie, who looks fabulous in it.
Oh, I was so drawn to so many of your pieces. The hardest part was making a decision.
Oh, good. I'm glad you had that hard decision. But you came up with a nice piece that looks fabulous on you. So I'm very happy that you chose that one.
Thank you. Yes, your designs are very universal. I mean, I would say the way you've put this together is really universal. It can be worn a lot of different ways, but I'm sure there's much more complicated ways to, put things together as you go.
Yes.
So you're going to be drawing on that seamstress DNA at some point.
Right. I got to brush off some more skills.
No, I know that it's a challenge. I know other artists in your group, and I think sewing is an art in and of itself, right?
It definitely is,
especially with something so refined. So, though that's amazing. I mean, I just love that this whole arena has come forward, for you and also for the other artists that are at the 10-pound studio.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about wearable art, because now that you've been on the path before, you're on that path again. But talk about some of the challenges that you have faced and think you probably will continue to face in this category.
Well, wearable art, there's fabulous jewelers all over the place, and it's a competitive field. Mm-hmm. So as all art can be, and it's just finding the right niche that can set you apart, and where you can shine in whatever your art is. And mm-hmm. with wearable arts, it's getting it on the person that's the hard part. Once it's on the person, they have a tendency to fall in love with it. And you can only wear pajama bottoms out so often before you finally have to, put on real clothes after a while.
Right.
And New England, we live in such a dreary climate half the time. A little bit of pop of color is going to make your day so much happier.
Yeah.
And that's where wearable art, I think, comes into play, because you can wear this top, for example, that you have on or that I'm wearing, and look like $1 million with a pair of jeans, mm-hmm. and not have to go to a lot of effort to get to that look. And so I'm encouraging people to open up their minds, get out of the sweatshirt, and get into some fun color, some fun art.
True, but I think finding wearable art and even finding places to display and sell wearable art is still a challenge, because you're looking at a society where there's a kind of a throwaway society, right? So we really have to build so I'm kind of curious, what you think is going to be a good way to get your work out there as you begin to build your collection.
Well, obviously social media plays a big part in many people's lives and in advertising and marketing. And so that is the avenue that I'm going to be exploring, as well as higher end craft shows where people go to those type of shows, not for a crocheted pot holder. There are places for that, right. But for something they can find that's out of the ordinary, that's unusual, that's going to make their day. Yeah. And I'm trying to create pieces that have dual purpose. So you can wear a piece this way, you can turn it around and have a totally different look the next day.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And we all have to work toward that goal. I totally agree with you. So you have created an exquisite collection for the Gettiman Gallery and Show, the Cove Gallery, in honor of Judy Gettiman. And I'm curious, it was really fun. I had heard about your work for years, but it was the first time I really saw a whole, kind of collection come together. And so I guess the big question, because it feels like you're you're ready to sort of take the next step, what are the next steps for you? And then how do you want to be found? And what would you like to kind of get out of this whole experience at this point?
Well, I'm very excited about investigating Nuno felting, because I think with that process, you can get a lot of texture into, and that works hand in hand with silk and wool to get the texture that you want to achieve. And I'm interested in creating the next multi facet as far as scarves or collars or even jewelry in Nuno felting. So that will be my next adventure.
Okay. Oh, well, that sounds like a good artistic adventure. And then on the commercial side, what's next for you?
And the commercial side, one can find me on both Instagram or Facebook. And I will be investigating, and I'm in the process of creating a website. And soon, so stay on the airwaves. You can find me on the website.
Right.
And most likely we will be doing local shows around the area.
Okay. Well, we want to tempt everybody by showing some other pieces of your work here and encouraging people to, reach out to you directly when they see this broadcast. The pieces that I'm looking at right now, for example, behind you, if I wanted to buy one of those pieces, or one of our viewers did, what would be the process? Where would they see the pieces and how would they find you?
Well, at present, since the website is not up and running yet, you're looking at them.
Okay. No, it sounds good.
And I will be posting more pictures on both Instagram or Facebook, and they can message me there and I will get back to them.
Great. It's great, Allyson. And I'm just curious, do you do any kind of custom work yet? Are you interested in that?
Absolutely. I encourage custom work, and I love to work with the customer one-on-one to, if they have a particular color palette, if they have their own ideas for shapes or designs, we can collaborate and work together to come up with something that's personal and one of a kind just for that person.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I love doing that. So.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, listen, I am so excited to share your story. I feel like we only it's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of your accomplishments before you went into the field of silk painting. And I know that given your incredible talent and your experience, that you will just fly in the silk world. And I just look forward to an opportunity to showcase your work at a Wearable Art show again someday when we get that going, and wishing you the best of success, Allyson.
I look forward to that, Jackie. Thank you so much for taking the time and finding out more about me.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. So with that, we're going to end this broadcast of Cape Ann ARTWaves. And once again, we'd like to thank our sponsors, and we would encourage everybody to look for this interview on the 1623 Studios YouTube channel under the ARTWaves playlist. Look for us on Facebook and on Twitter, and of course, sign up for the C-Arts eBlast so that you can see this interview as soon as it's released. That's going to be the best place to find it, and also on cable channel 12 here on Cape Ann. So thank you again. That ends this episode of Cape Ann ARTWaves from Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Thanks, Jackie.